Well, as we told you at the top of the hour, the city of Denver went through with money-saving layoffs today. Almost 200 people lost their jobs. Another 600 positions were eliminated. We know from recent research that layoffs can be devastating, of course, for individuals. Many people over 50 who lose their jobs will never find another one. So with that in mind, we got Dr. Sheryl Ziegler here, our mental health expert, to help us talk about layoff anxiety and what people must be feeling right now. So let's first talk about the feeling of dread. So people knew coming in today, okay, dozens of people knew coming into work today that these layoffs would happen because it had been announced prior. What were some of the things that they were thinking, feeling, the mindset, the buildup? I can't even imagine.
Right. I mean, I think we can all imagine, right? The anxiety must be really, really high, and the fear, and then you don't know, can I confide with my colleagues? Can I not? What if I stay? And people who stay, by the way, they, of course, it's awful to be laid off and lose a job. And there's also the survivor's guilt when you're not the one that was cut as well.
Right.
So it's like a 50-50, no matter what, you're going to be going through a really hard time. And so it's really an awful feeling. I think people have been interviewed and they have said that this has been absolutely dreadful. Some people describe it as even traumatic.
Yeah.
And so, I think it doesn't take me, a mental health expert, to say, this is something that's high anxiety provoking. And just like you said, the stats are really interesting because the older someone is, the harder it is to get a job.
Right.
And, I think the stats are also really interesting and just basically saying that they went in and usually people with seniority have more protections. And that was eliminated.
Right. So because that was eliminated, what are some of these senior employees feeling? Because they also are going to fall into that demographic that we just mentioned earlier, the statistic of, will they ever find a job again?
Exactly. I mean, they could be feeling so many different things. Like, well, they feel like, I put so much time.
Right.
Imagine I put 20 years in here. Maybe somebody who's been here for 2 or 3 years who has maybe glowing reviews because they have listed how they broke it down with all the sort of a formula of how they were considering things. Well, maybe you could argue, well, if you're only here 2 or 3 years, you don't have enough time to maybe have some negatives in your file, or maybe just some controversies or things like that. So I think that that's what grows in terms of tension, is you don't know who to trust. And it feels maybe more subjective when they have this formula, and then it depends. What if you say, gosh, for a couple of years I had a supervisor I didn't get along with, but I've been so dedicated here. So there's that piece, and then there's somebody, again, who could be there just a lot less and maybe not get cut for different reasons. And so I just think that this has really been an awful whole process for people, and it's not over. This is the beginning.
And it's been so public. Listen, I've been laid off before. There's a grief involved, at least for me. There was a grief, especially for some of these long-term jobs I've had. If you build relationships with people. So talk to me about how the fact that this was announced, months ago, it was in the public eye, and then all of a sudden it is happening. Are they going through a grief period before, during, after? How does that work?
Yeah, we talk about things being anticipatory. So there's anticipatory grief. There's anticipatory anxiety. It's like, oh my gosh, I know it's coming. And so on a mild to moderate level, I've been feeling this for months, sometimes years, it depends on the situation. And then when it finally gets here, people have all different kinds of feelings. And so I think, of course, there's been that piece of anticipation. And then there's also been the piece of you're half in and you're half out, because you have to be thinking about your future. I've got to put my resume together. I have to start interviewing. Maybe I have to start networking with people again, which are tips on what I would tell people to do. But when you're still working somewhere and doing that, it's very stressful. It makes you very distracted. If you've got kids at home, you've got a spouse or a partner at home, it makes you probably a little less available and present with them.
Yeah.
Because you can't get a break from the stress.
Right. No, I've been there, and it's awful. I feel all of those individuals right now. You talked about some of those tips, and then I want to talk about some protections that employees may have. But first, the tips. What would you recommend to somebody right now, whether it's the Denver employees that have just been laid off or people in general? What would you tell them to do, as uncomfortable as it is right now?
Well, the first piece is that relationship piece, right? You've got to hold on to whatever relationships you do trust. You've got to have someone in your personal life that you can just vent to, you can cry to, you can be angry with. There's really got to be a safe piece, and I don't want to underscore that because, yes, you need a check and a job and to pay bills, but really without other people to connect with, people don't do well. So that's number one. But then after that, there are things like get your resume together. Even if you make this round of cuts, still get your resume together, start reaching out to those people. Maybe someone was a boss of yours or a colleague of yours 10 years ago even. Reach out to them and say, hey, I'm working here. Lots of things are changing and going on. And I just want to let you know I'd be open to opportunities. I think that's really important. I think the other piece is you've got to figure out, like, get everything in order in terms of your benefits and your paid time off and the severance package and, you know, really trying to figure out, because I saw that benefits, it said, oh, they were extended through September 30th. Well, September 30th.
Right.
That'll come so fast.
Around the corner.
Right.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of planning. And so even as I say it, I know it's very stressful. So what I would do if I was in the position, regardless of where you land in this, is to say, I'm going to make time, limit it, but create time, probably most days, to spend a little time every day on one of these things, the resume, the reaching out, the benefits, and that will add up. You'll get to where you need to be. What people do is they avoid it because it's stressful, and then all of a sudden it all comes down on them.
And then that adds to the anxiety. We only have about 30 seconds. Any protections or help in place for employees that are facing this right now?
Well, I think, you know, them staying very closely connected with their unions, with people who are representing them is one piece. But the biggest sort of resiliency, protective factor psychologically is connection with others. Just don't hide. People sometimes feel shame. Sometimes they feel, you know, guilt. They don't even want to look their own kids in the eyes. Like, don't hide from those people. Embrace those people. Be vulnerable with them, because that's really the greatest protective factor.
Great advice, Dr. Ziegler. Dr. Sheryl Ziegler, thank you.